Chicago Cubs had an interesting season last year as they started off well with great performances on the pitching side of things from guys like Marcus Stroman and Justin Steele. However, it ended up being a bit of a middling season overall with an 83-79 record, just barely over 500. Heading into 2024, there's a lot of things we can expect from this team. Some good, some exciting, some maybe not so much as exciting, but we're going to dive into all of it right here on Bleacher Brawls. My name is Derek. I'm here with Luke. You're watching Bleacher Brawls, and this is the Chicago Cubs 2024 team profile. First things first, I'm going to hand it over to Luke. I want to get your opening thoughts on this kind of Cubs team and what's the vibes entering 2024.
What I'll say is, right off the bat, is they did a lot better than I expected them to do at the start of 2023. I looked at their rotation and I just thought, all right, this is going nowhere, and I expected the other teams that are competing with in the Central to be a little better. So I expect them to improve a lot in 2024, and I really kind of like the roster that they have now, a lot better than they had at the beginning of last year.
Yeah, and I think the perception of how we see some guys like a Justin Steele, for example, I think the change of perception based on last season, I think that's also like a big thing in how we view the roster. In terms of viewing this roster, let's dive into the key players here. So, Luke, give me three key players for this Cubs team, and out of those three, pick one that you'd like to expand on why you think they're a key player for the team in 2024.
The first is, I think you got to say first is Justin Steele, the kind of ace that most teams would kill to have. Then there's Dansby Swanson, who will really be dependent on in the heart of that order with Cody Bellinger likely gone, not 100% gone. But my favorite player on the Cubs is Christopher Morel. He's this rare kind of budding superstar, the utility superstar, that kind of guy like the Cubs had years ago with Chris Bryant, the guy who can play all over the diamond and really contribute with the bat. And he's not the greatest fielder, but he can hit. And he's young. He's 23 or maybe 24 right now. He was just about as productive last year as Dansby Swanson was while playing in 43 less games in 2023. 209 less at-bats than Swanson. And his batting average wasn't great at 247, but he slugged .508, had an .821 OPS, and had 26 home runs. And all those numbers that I just cited were better than Dansby Swanson's numbers. And Dansby Swanson just signed before last year for 7 years and $177 million. So I think the whole world is kind of sleeping on Christopher Morel here. I think that's going to change soon enough. Yeah, he's 24, and I think he is really the future cornerstone of the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, he's interesting. I know they DH'd him a lot last year because there are questions defensively, but they did move him around too in his field. But defense, yeah, definitely is a question mark for him. For me, I think we talk about key players. Ian Happ, I think, needs to be brought up. Adbert Alzolay was kind of claimed that closer spot last year, stepped up big. But for me, I'm going to focus on Seiya Suzuki. His first year in the big leagues, I mean, he was solid, 116 weighted runs created plus, but at times it's left people maybe desiring a little bit more from him. Past year, 2023, 285 average. He had a 126 weighted runs created plus, 20 homers. He also stole 6 bases. Not much, but it's a little bit. It's better than nothing. He has been a high BABIP guy, so that is something to watch. But he put up a 3.2 F4 last year. And when you look at his fielding defensively, he did get better. His negative defensive metrics his first season, slightly negative. This season jumped him into the positive with 2 defensive runs saved, 2 outs above average. So solid in the field, and I think when you have the bat, he's going to be a middle of the lineup bat for that Cubs team. So I think he is very, very important for the Cubs team.
I won't have you look it up right now, but being a Red Sox fan and thinking about Masataka Yoshida, do you know offhand if Suzuki's performance suffered in the second half of the season?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But if I look, but when I look at his splits last year, he actually did better in the second half in terms of batting average, hit more homers, drove the ball more. So I think he did better in the second half last year. But he also started the year slow, so I don't know. Also too, it was his second year in the big leagues last year, so there's also that. I do want to also to add with that too is Suzuki also too, like, because it's his second year. a little bit more used to the travel, and the NL Central teams I don't think are as spread out as like AL East when you got to go to like Canada and Florida, and I feel like the NL Central teams are a little bit more compact geographically. So there's also that.
Yeah, I forgot he started in 2022 actually. So the first year in the major league adjustment wouldn't really apply to him.
Yeah, the other things too, I do also he didn't play in the WBC last year because he was hurt. But besides that, let's move on to key off-season moves for the Cubs. Their key off-season moves included that they traded for Michael Busch and Yancy Almonte from the Dodgers. They traded Jackson Ferris, a highly rated pitching prospect, and Zahir Hope. They also signed Shota Imanaga, and they also snatched Hector Neris for the bullpen. So those are kind of their key moves. Out of those moves, which one do you think is going to be a big move? Or if there's a move that I didn't list that you think is big or maybe underrated. But what's a move that they made this offseason that you think is going to be important for them?
I think it's got to be bringing in Shota Imanaga from Japan. This is a team who's at the rotate. Like I said at the beginning, the rotation just looked so meh last season, and Imanaga kind of fits that. I think the expectations for Imanaga kind of fit with that profile too. He's a lefty who relies on pinpoint control. His fastball is very low 90s. I think he tops out at like 91, 92, something like that. Is he crafty enough? Can he fool major league hitters enough to get by at this level without a dominant fastball? But look, if he can start 30 games with an ERA around 4 or not too high above 4, I expect the Cubs to do pretty well this year considering the division they play. And look, you got Justin Steele, you got Kyle Hendricks, and then if you have an effective Shota Imanaga, that's a pretty formidable trio to have at the top of your rotation.
The only thing I do want to touch on real quick on Imanaga, because I was considering bringing up, I do want to counter that. I don't think he's necessarily a control guy because his fastball doesn't throw super hard, but he had the highest stuff plus in Japan last year in the NPB, so really good stuff. Fastball's not the fastest, but he does have good life, gets a lot of swing and miss on his secondaries. But yeah, the fastball has been a home run problem at times, so he does need to control the fastball, but in terms of just pure stuff, he has it in terms of the secondaries and that. So I did want to kind of add that to that as well. But he will need to command in the big leagues. I'm going to touch on Hector Neris. Had a very, very good year for Houston last year out of the bullpen. Made 71 appearances and had a 171 ERA. Now the FIP was a little bit high at 383 and a 389 SIERA as well. So the underlying numbers maybe aren't as favorable for him. But regardless, when you're a reliever, I mean, it would be better to have clean innings, but even if two guys get on base, if no one scores, I think you look at that and it's, all right, no one still scored, you're okay with it. So even though the secondaries weren't great, he still had a very good year last year. The walk rate was a little bit high, 11.4%, which was almost double his 2022 mark, but a little bit more in line with what he did in 2021 and 2022 with the Phillies. So overall, I think Neris is a nice solid pickup. He slots into their bullpen as a setup, probably as a setup man right behind Alzolay, who I mentioned earlier, who will be their closer. So I think that's a solid pickup, and it's only 1 year for $9 million, so not expensive as all. Also has a club option as well, although it could convert to a player option with 60 appearances for Neris. So I thought that was a very interesting signing, especially with that kind of appearance clause on his contract regarding the option.
He was filthy
Yes.
when he first got to the Astros. I remember. I mean, like sub 1 ERA for like the first half of the season, I think.
Oh, definitely. Last but not least, we want to touch on expectations for this Cubs team. What's the expectation? Not necessarily what we think is going to happen, but more so kind of like what should the expectation for this team be based on their talent. Whether we think they'll reach them or not, I think is a little bit different. But I'll hand it over to you, Luke. What do you think the expectation for this Cubs team is?
I see this is not the NL Central from 8-10 years ago. It's not complete trash there other than the Cardinals. You know, there is some talent there, and I don't think these are the dregs of the league here anymore. I don't think the Cubs are a really, really good team, but I see a shootout at the top of the NL Central this year between the Cubs and the Reds, with the Cubs winning out in the end and taking home the NL Central title, as long as health goes their way and there's no crazy bad luck that happens to them. I think they're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think expectations for this Cubs team, for me, I think it's like just push for the playoffs, really. And I think the expectation should be for them to be in the playoffs. I think that's the expectation. Whether it happens or not will be to be seen, but I think that is what their expectation is, make the playoffs. It's an extremely weird division, though, in the terms of I think it's the most unpredictable division because you have the Brewers who won it last year, but no Corbin Burns, no Brandon Woodruff, et cetera, right? So that's interesting. You look at the Reds, look how good their young core is. Even the Pirates, I think, could be really sneaky as well. So I think it's in the Cardinals. What happens if they bounce back? Right? I think it's the most unpredictable division in baseball, and I think it's a good thing though. I don't think there'll be a team that runs away, like you said. I think it'll kind of be a dogfight. So I think the Cubs, but I think the Cubs, their expectation is to make the playoffs, and I think that's the goal they're going to be pushing for. But overall, I think that's a great place to wrap this thing up. So make sure to check out all our other team profiles. This is part of our 40 videos in 40 days series. It's a big thing we've taken on here for the second straight year. We're excited about it. Cubs fans, let us know your thoughts in the comments and whatnot. Let us know how you feel about your team entering 2024. And for Luke, my name is Derek. You have been watching Bleacher Brawls, and we will see you next time.